My mother was the programmer in a classical radio station, and classical music was very important. Like there was always classical music on the radio when we were in the car, when my mom was making dinner and things like that. Started taking piano lessons at age 6. And then when I was 11, I started to learn the viola as well at school. Things like Bach, it's very structured, you have to play everything rigidly, whereas more modern and contemporary composers or people like Erik Satie, where there are instructions within the piano music to kind of get lost, and you're not just a technician playing music, you're actually an artist able to express yourself through this. When I was about 12-ish, I started to explore a bit more other types of music, and that's kind of when I discovered like hard rock and grunge and radio metal, things like Korn and Rob Zombie and Rammstein, and suddenly it was this other way of kind of being able to express other feelings. When I was about 14-ish, I kind of started exploring metal, and especially death metal at that age really grabbed me, and I knew it was something I wanted to be part of. There wasn't much of a female presence in metal. It's gotten a lot better recently, and that's wonderful. But yeah, at the time, I certainly really looked up to Angelo from Arch Enemy. She was, probably the biggest female death metal vocalist at the time that anyone knew about. So 15-year-old self obviously was very inspired by her. And then to get more into the scene, people like Dana Duffy from Mythic, Durketta, it's really opened up to more kinds of people participating, and I think that's wonderful for everyone because you're getting different points of view, and that's how we evolve. That's how music and art evolve. I joined my first band as a vocalist when I was 15, a band called Pyra. It was a time where I was going through major depression. My father was dying of cancer. I was going through the normal things that teenagers go through. And every week I had this physical release. So being able to growl and scream into a microphone and just kind of regain a sense of balance. We played shows kind of around Toronto, which is where I grew up. And we never got much farther than that, but it was a lot of fun and it was really worth it, The band kind of dissolved in, I think, late 2011, early 2012-ish. Shortly after moving to London, met my partner, and we initially connected over music because I had just been to a metal festival in France. So I'd just been to Hellfest and was wearing a Hellfest t-shirt. And I walked into the store where he was working and he just said, "Nice shirt." And we started talking about music, we started talking about life, we just kind of connected, and here we are all these years later. And he's really the one who introduced me to black metal, because obviously I knew about black metal and I'd listened to some black metal here and there, but it hadn't connected with me in the same way that death metal had. In the summer of 2012, I did this trip where I went by myself to the New Forest, so kind of southern England, and it was a kind of special, magical trip that allowed for a lot of time alone with nature and introspection and stuff. And on the train ride back home into London, I was just listening to some of the things that Daniel had given me and came across some ambient black metal bands, and something just suddenly clicked. And so not too long after that, we formed a band, an ambient black metal band called Yersinia. The original recording was written for 2 guitars, a bass, drums, vocals, piano kind of thing, and since we were just 3 people, we needed to find a way to interpret the other guitar parts. So I had recently bought an electric viola, and so I started playing some of the guitar parts on viola, and we found ways to kind of rewrite the music so that in a live context we could actually deliver songs and such. And we did a show in Brussels and a show in London with that kind of configuration. And that was kind of my first experiments with the electric viola. And so it's kind of from there that Luxul, my solo noise project, was born. The name Luxul is a palindrome, so it's a word that you can write forwards and backwards. And it's kind of made up of lux, so light, coming from Latin lux, and xul, which is kind of a term that is unlight. So more so than darkness, it is the opposite of light. So light and unlight. And to me, it's kind of this balance. A lot of my work centers around balance because it's something that I struggle with in my life, finding balance. And so it's ambience and it's violence, it's serenity and beauty and strength, and it's all improvised, and for that it's really freeing. I've always been a perfectionist, and so everything was always very calculated, and it took me a long time to finally realize that you can just let go, and it was this massive just freedom. Like in noise and drone and ambient music, like anything goes, and it can be terrible, it can be wonderful, and all of that is valid. And I love that, and I think it's super important and it's super cathartic. I'm often doing kind of one-off collaborations at various events as well, such as the Ruxul Orchestra and with the saxophonist Alan Wilkinson. I'm always up for collaborations, so anyone who wants to kind of get in contact and be, let's do something.
Continuum was originally developed during my residency at Performance Space in Folkestone back in February of this year. And so as I was kind of performing within the space, I would project the live stream back onto myself, and it would create these kind of ghost images of what I had just done. And so there's this exploration of my body within this physical space and the confines of it, and then also this digital kind of ghost reprojection of my actions, showing the successes, the mistakes. And since then, I've been able to perform that piece again in Bristol, and it's been a really interesting kind of learning and growing experience. Shelter is something that also came out of my residency at Performance Space earlier this year. Essentially what I've done in Shelter is build a kind of shoddy shelter. So I'll enter the space and just kind of place myself under the shelter and just lie there kind of as long as feels right or necessary, and just kind of take it as a time of healing and this feeling protected within the space, but also being actually very vulnerable. It's an ongoing project, and each time is different. I've been working with encaustic for a very long time now, over 10 years actually. In the past few years, I've been playing around a lot with doing it on a human canvas. So my partner, luckily, has volunteered his body to be my canvas for this. Essentially creating this strange, organic looking but alien feeling world and organism growing off of someone. The thing that I really like about using the beeswax on a human canvas is that this is supposedly something that's healing, but it's also something that is a material that is used for preserving and closing things in. So there's this strange kind of contradiction.
One of my plans for the coming time is to maybe just getting out of London and doing more things within the UK and outside of the UK. And I'm also really hoping at some point this year to record a Luxul album. I think it'll be something where I rent out a space for a day and just kind of spend a day improvising, and afterwards going through and kind of taking highlights of that are in a more digestible recording format that I can then release to the world. My website is emilynewman.com. Emily spelled with an IE at the end. There is a Luxul Facebook page as well. You can find me on Instagram. I'm on Bandcamp as well with Luxul. If you're looking for my work, you'll find my face. You'll see photos of someone screaming with a viola, so that's me.